I'm Matthew McCabe. Welcome to Miracle Voices. Each episode, we will be delving into stories of forgiveness, healing, and transformation that have come about from integrating the principles of the book A Course in Miracles. If you want to learn more about A Course in Miracles, visit www.acim.org. If you'd like to visit the Miracle Voices site, please go to www.miraclevoices.org. If you feel inspired to make a love offering, please visit us at miraclevoices.org/donate. All donations go to support the work of the Foundation for Inner Peace, the publisher of A Course in Miracles. Now here's your program. Hello, this is Matthew McCabe. Welcome back to another edition of Miracle Voices. I'm here with my co-host, Tam Morgan. Tam, how you doing today?
I am still here.
Good.
Alive and well, actually. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here along with our guest today, Allan Ishac. Allan, welcome to Miracle Voices.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed every single Miracle Voices podcast since the very first one, so it's very special for me to be here as your guest.
That shows us how discerning you are. Right up. We heard in the proverbial backstage how Allan likes any place in any weather. So,
as long as it's hot, yes.
As long as it's hot.
Allan, tell us where you are in the world right now.
I am in hot and steamy New York City where I live. I'm sitting in my apartment in Greenwich Village, a couple of blocks from the arch at Washington Square Park, which many people know about around the world.
Yeah.
That's where I am.
Great. Well, Allan, why don't we kick it off and maybe you could just tell us how A Course in Miracles came into your life?
Sure, I can. I think the path to the Course for me began in 1975. I was 19 years old. It was the springtime. I had just finished my first year of college. And I was lying in bed one night when the question suddenly popped into my head, why am I here? It was a good question, but it really scared me. And I'm pretty sure I was totally asleep until that moment because I kind of went into shock. And I spent my 20s and 30s after that were spent basically searching for the answer to the question. I struggled with a lot with anxiety and depression at the time. I lived each day in constant fear, although I had a very good mask and I fooled a lot of people. But I tried everything for a lot of years. I followed a guru around the country. I went to church. I went to synagogue. My mother was Catholic. My father was Jewish. I read a ton of New Age stuff. I went on meditation retreats. I started psychotherapy, medication, everything really. And nothing helped for long. And I was miserable and feeling hopeless. And in the fall of 1985, two friends at an ad agency where I was working at the time here in the city heard about A Course in Miracles class offered at the New York Open Center. And it was taught by a woman named Diane Brooke Gusick. She became a close friend of Tam's mother. And I know it was 1985, by the way, because I still have the flyer from the class. So I bought the blue book and I opened it that first day of class. I did not understand a single word, but like many people, even many I heard on the podcast, I knew I had finally found my path. And it's hard to explain because I honestly didn't understand anything that Diane was saying, but I knew it was the answer I'd been searching for. Something about the word, something about the rhythm of the words went in, and I've never doubted it's my path. I've thrown it away a lot. I've in that many years, three plus decades, I've put it aside for a year or two at a time, but I've always come back to it. And in 1990, I think it was, Diane told me about Ken and Gloria Wapnick's retreat center in Roscoe. And I started to attend workshops up there. And Ken took the course study much deeper for me and became my primary teacher, as he was for Diane. And to this day, I watch his online videos pretty much every day. And, but I really still don't understand the course very well. It hasn't been smooth sailing. Ken used to say, if you don't throw the book against the wall a few times a year, you probably aren't doing it right. So I must be doing it really well because my copy looks like hell. It's held together with Scotch tape, so I've thrown it around a lot. But that's how I came to the course, and I've never strayed too far.
There are great videos of Ken on YouTube. I watch those all the time too, and then they suggest them to me because their algorithm, and they're just so good. Some days I'm like, I'm getting exactly what Ken's talking about, and then other days I'm like, there's not a thought penetrating this skull. It's so thick.
Oh man, I have so many stories like that. I mean, one of my stories today, I'm almost embarrassed to tell it because it shows how for 30 years my ego is so resistant, and it's like I don't tell it much, honestly, because it looks like I haven't done a thing. But yes, Ken really got the course, and he tells it. You know, he had a way of speaking about it that was light, and I loved his Brooklyn accent. So he tends to speak to me. So yeah, I hear that.
That's so great. I'm struck by something when I hear a story like yours, because my first question that I had when you were telling it is, that your father was Jewish and your mother was, did you say Catholic?
Yeah, I say my father was Jewish, my mother was Catholic, and I was confused. Yeah.
Right. But you went to synagogue. Did you also go to church?
Did them both. Tried everything.
You did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just found it interesting because you said you went to synagogue and then suddenly you end up with some material that's very Christian in terminology. And yet it has that spirit. It almost is like you were looking, because you were confused by both, for something that could synthesize.
It's really true, Tam. When I first had that kind of terror when I was 19, I went to my father and I said, I don't know what life is about. Am I going to die? What happens when you die? And he said something like, "Oh, you won't care because you won't be alive, so you won't care." And of course, that just put me into more terror. And everywhere I turned, it seemed like there was no answer to the question that I was asking. What are we doing here, and why are we all just on the treadmill and not seeming to get anywhere, and no one had any answers? So the course was the first thing that really spoke directly to the questions I was asking, as opposed to all the deflection and distraction that I found in the institutional religious institutions.
Did you gravitate to Woody Allen?
Ken is so funny. People don't realize it, but he's a comedian. He's a mystic and a comedian. And did I gravitate towards Woody Allen? Matt and I were talking about Seinfeld. I probably gravitate towards Jerry Seinfeld if I go in any direction.
Well, I was thinking of that young at an age to be kind of get obsessed with death, which many Jews do, actually. And Woody Allen just embodied that and brought it to the world. So, sure. Yes, and Ken was extremely funny when he was comfortable. I watched Ken I was a youth watching a youth and of a sort, and he was certainly older than I was at the time, but he was still a baby. And in retrospect, as a 63-year-old looking back, and when he first came into our lives, he was a very shy, stuttering, uncomfortable servant of Helen. And the more he came into his own, the more that humor was shared. And, Whit the same, actually, when my mother met Whit, he was so serious. I was like, who is this military guy coming into our lives? You've got to be kidding me. And my brother and I used to take turns, kind of virtually pulling straws of who would have to sit next to him because he was so dry, and and then this little sense of humor started coming out that was just hysterical. So part of the coursework too.
Yeah. Well, for me, humor was always a way to kind of try to break my anxiety. I mean, my house was very tense, and I was the comedian to try to break some of the tension. I was just scared, and so I developed that humor piece as a way to survive. So yeah, it's complicated for me, I think.
Helen, I'm curious. I don't know if you've heard the expression that Jews created guilt and Catholics perfected it.
I have heard that.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, since you got to see both sides of that, is there a difference in flavor of the guilt, or is it just guilt is guilt?
Yeah, I think hate is hate, guilt is guilt. It's horrible, whichever side of the coin you're on. It's just, it's my mother had a bad experience in her church life. My father had a bad experience in his Jewish life. And, they were both, I think in retrospect, they were really both struggling with the same question I had, but had given up. That's what I think. We were raised without any formal religious training. And so I think in some ways the blank slate helped me as opposed to having me try to unlearn one discipline and go to another. But it was a scary childhood for me. I was just a nervous kid.
And what was their reaction when you shared, if you shared the course with them?
Yeah, it's a great question. My father had a friend who was actually a very early course student, also Iraqi, a woman named Renee Saltoun, who became a close friend of Ken's. And she was a psychologist. And she kind of spoke to my father in Arabic. And I think he was hungry for it. He was a Freemason as a young man. And there was some seed there that he was curious about. My mother was so angry at religion. She said all the wars were started over religion, and so she was very angry about it, and she had very little interest. But my father was curious, but was too involved with the ego pieces, and he left Baghdad under duress during the war. And he was very angry, and it was very hard for him to come to peace. My father was not calm, and neither my mother. So we were sort of marinating in their anxiety, I think, my sisters and myself.
Which is probably a good place, a good leaping off point for your forgiveness story. Or you have two stories that you can share today. Wherever you'd like to start, Allan, we'd love to hear.
Sure. Well, the first story took place about 5 or 6 years ago. My oldest friend in life, Larry, was recovering in the East Village from a hip break, and he had just given up his walker for a cane and was eager to go out and have lunch. It was a Saturday, so it's always tricky to find a place to eat in the village on Saturdays. But because he was very close to a popular restaurant, Veselka, which has become even more popular now because it's Ukrainian and there's a lot of activities there now. But we walked the 2 blocks from his place to Veselka, and we went inside, and the entrance area was packed. We added our name to the waiting list, and Larry kind of shuffled over with his cane to one of an empty counter stool, and was sort of resting on his cane, resting on the stool. I exchanged greetings with the manager, a guy named Gary, who's very nice, and we were waiting. And after about 5 minutes, a guy walked in who was probably our age, so around 60 at the time, but bigger than us. He had a scowl on his face. He had a fed up look, and so I call him Angry Local. But he glanced around, he walked up to Larry, and he said, "Are you waiting around? Are you going to eat?" And Larry said that he was just waiting for a table. So the guy kind of gruffly said, "How about getting up so I can eat something?" So Larry kind of strolled off, but I got white hot. I mean, I went from 0 to 60 instantly. I'm not sure exactly what about that exchange made me so upset, but I started yelling at the guy saying, "Look, he's injured. Can't you see the cane?" The guy said, "Calm down, friggin' relax." He didn't use the word frigging. And we were, in each other's faces, nose to nose. And he told Larry to sit back down, but Larry had strolled off to a seat by the entranceway. So I was exchanging lethal looks with this guy. I walked over to Larry. He said it's no big deal, but I could not calm down. And I told him I needed to step outside. Veselka has these huge picture windows on the corner of 2nd Avenue. And so I walked outside, and from the picture window, I could see angry local sitting at the counter, and I started throwing eye daggers at him, and he was giving it back to me, and it was out of control, and I was really really just uncomfortable and getting crazy, really mad. And I thought about going back inside and shaking it up. I am embarrassed to say that I was going to ask Gary, the manager, to taint his food. I had all kinds of images of revenge going on. And after decades of studying the course, I finally realized this ego attack was going to ruin my lunch with Larry and probably ruin my day and the week. And I thought, I have to ask for help. I can't spend the day like this. So I quieted myself. I closed my eyes. I turned my back to the window and I said, please help me. And instantly, without a pause, I heard in my head, buy him lunch. I just 3 words. I opened my eyes. My inner maniac went crazy. I argued with a voice in my head. I said, buy him lunch. There's no way. He's an SOB. I am not buying him lunch. And then I did something really ridiculous. I closed my eyes again and I asked for better advice. And immediately, again, emphatically, I heard inside my head, buy him lunch. I started to argue it again, but something was going on. And all I can say was that I started to feel calmer. It was really interesting. After a minute, I was actually admiring the idea of buying this guy lunch. I thought it was creative and interesting, and I was calmer. So I walked back inside. I averted my eyes so I wouldn't get activated again. I didn't look at the guy. A couple of minutes later, Larry and I were sent to a table. We were about 15 feet away from the guy at the counter. I had my back to him. Larry was facing him. And I called Gary, the manager, over and I said, you see that guy at the bar, at the counter? I want to buy him lunch. He said, oh, yeah, he's a very nice guy. Comes in a lot. Do you know him? I said, no, I don't know him, but we were chatting and I want to buy him lunch. So when his bill comes, just bring it over. So Larry immediately, my friend Larry immediately said, wait, why you buy that jerk lunch? It's absurd. But I said that I had to make peace with myself and him, and this was the only way to do it. So 20 minutes went by. Gary brought the check. It was $14. I remember I gave him a 20. I said, give the change to the waitress. And I thought that was it. A few minutes later, Larry looked over my shoulder and he said, the guy's coming over here. And I got scared. I felt my heart racing and I got nervous. Around a row of tables came angry local, not looking so angry, kind of moving slow, looking confused, a bit sheepish. And he walked directly to me. He put out his hand. I stood up and he said, that was a classy move. You didn't have to do that, but that was really classy. I thought that was a great word, classy. It's such a New York word. So anyway, he shook my hand. I told him that I thought I'd taken the whole thing too far. He said, no, I think I took it too far. And again, he said that was a real New York moment. I'll never forget it. And he stuck around. He was talking to my friend. My friend Larry's a cartoonist, and this guy knew the cartoonist who did Dondi. So they started talking about Dondi, and I was just watching him thinking, what is going on? And he was a really nice guy. I mean, a guy I wanted to smash in the face a half hour earlier, who was also a writer and friendly. And I thought, wow, what is going on? And he stayed a couple more minutes and then he looked at me again. He pointed his finger at me. He said, you're a classy guy. That was really something. And he left. And it dawned on me almost immediately. And I thought about it for a long time afterwards, that is a true miracle moment, that everybody in the place, everybody involved, was taken into consideration with with guidance that I would never have thought about. It was 180 degrees from anything I wanted to do was buy him lunch. And, it came through as 3 words. I mean, even I couldn't mess it up, and it was very powerful. So much so that last year I had a artist friend do a paint and metal kind of signage piece that hangs on my wall, because I want to remember every day that buy him lunch is the way out, asking for guidance. I tell this story, and I had a friend who went and bought lunch for somebody she was angry at, which was very nice gesture. But the story is not about buying anybody lunch, of course. It's about listening and following as best we can, as best I can. And it just had such an impact on me. And I've tried to live my life like that ever since. And, it was, the course said something like, the holiest place on earth is where an ancient hatred becomes a present love. And, I didn't know the guy. He wasn't an ancient hatred, but my hate was old and embedded. And so that certainly was turned into a present love. But it was one of the most dramatic demonstrations that I've ever had. And now I just want to hear that voice over and over and more clearly. And so the job now is to remove the blocks, remove the hate, and remove the murderous thoughts, which I still have plenty of.
This is such a fantastic story. It's such as you said, a New York story. And my writer mind immediately sent it to the New Yorker. And you know what the title of it is? 2 Angry Locals.
Yes.
I mean,
so good, Tam. Yes. What was I looking at? I'm projecting my own. Yeah, absolutely. I was accusing him of being a miserable, angry guy. Guess who was? Yes. Thank you. Projection. I just projecting my hate onto him. And yes, thank you. Perfect.
And also, when you first said it, I thought you said angry loco. Which applied as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Better even. Angry locos. Yeah, 2 angry locos. I think we have it
in New York.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's such a perfect example of a fantastic forgiveness story, because it affects everyone around as well. And,
that's right.
And it also brings up, for me, the saying in the Course that all you need is a little willingness. Not full-blown willingness, just a little, like the rest of you is fighting unbelievably.
Yes.
And there's that little willingness there to listen. No, 1, to ask for help. 2, to listen, and 3, to act. And it's just, the whole system is great. And this is one of those cases where, the Course also says, when a brother asks you to do a foolish thing, as long as it hurts no one, do it. The brother in this case was spirit.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean lunch?
Right. How dare you insult me like that?
But you
give me the $20 if you want me to buy a lunch. Right.
Exactly. And there's a smiling of who do you think gave you the $20 in the place? I did. Yeah. But the second part of that is that the foolish thing was truly, buy him lunch equals give him nourishment. Pay for his nourishment now, because you actually removed it. I've
never thought of that, Tam. That's really great. Yeah.
And the 2 of you removed each other's stability and nourishment, and then you're feeding him and paying for your own accountability in it. And of course, that's forgiveness. Of course, let's make it never have happened.
Yeah, right.
And it never did. So what a wonderful story.
I can feel the resistance there, because I know exactly what you're talking about when you say, okay, I'm open to guidance. I'm going to ask. You get a very clear answer, but it's like, no, I don't want to do that. That goes right into the heart of my beating ego, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, for me, Matt, it's like, I'm going to improve upon it. Buy him lunch. Okay. But no dessert, I'm going to make it better somehow. And that's purely my ego saying, resisting and saying, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to let this guy get the upper hand. I'm going to be right in the end. So it for me, it's really about just following it exactly without embellishments, improvements, my stupid improvements. I have no idea what is in my best interest. This, for me, everyone gained. The Gary, the manager, has talked about it. The waitress gained. Larry, my oldest friend, I've known him since 10. We're 66. He and I had the most profound and meaningful conversation that we'd ever had about his anger and my anger and how hate ruins our lives. He grew up with me in Jersey as well. And that was such a gift on top of everything else. So yeah, it just touched everybody. Yeah, how could I come up with a solution in that case that would touch everybody in that way? There is no way I could have, which is why I know it came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
In me, but not of me, I guess that's what the Course says.
Ooh, can't wait to hear your second story.
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. Well, this is the one I don't tell often because it really, Matt, to your point, shows how resistant I am. And it even happened after the Buy 'em Lunch story. But I am a writer, and in 2016, when the ex-president, I call this story how an ex-president became my greatest teacher. In 2016, the president then was elected, and I got triggered, as many others did, and I heard Michael Moore call for an army of satirists, and I was a pretty good satire writer, and I thought, okay, my pen is my best weapon. I'm gonna fight this fight. As soon as I said the word fight, I was heading the wrong direction. But for 4 years, 7 days a week, I mean, without interruption, I think I took a couple of days break in there. I wrote over 1,500 pieces. I wrote this satirical blog, and I posted it on Medium, medium.com, and it did well. I mean, some of the pieces did over 1 million reads. It was popular, and that just really fluffed me up. I was all excited about the numbers, and I loved the growing readership, and I just no matter who I was with, my former girlfriend, traveling wherever, I would get up and do this blog every day. And I was very committed. I was really committed to my hate, but I didn't see it that way. I called my blog funny. It's harmless. It's just satire. I'm just making a point. I'm not really holding a sword. And I convinced myself that that was true. And after the 2020 election, I was kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do with this. And I kept writing it into January 2021, but it just wasn't sitting well with me anymore. And I'd let some days go by without posting. When I did, I didn't enjoy it at all. It frankly was getting me down. Then I just tried to write humor pieces and not write about the ex-president or what was going on. So I'd write neutral, amusing stuff. That didn't work. And finally, on April 3rd, last year, April 3rd, 2021, I stopped posting after 4 years, and I have not returned to Medium. And the reason is that morning in April, I had a very powerful realization that every single day for the previous 4 years, I had been marinating in hate. I didn't call it that, as I said, but it was hate. And I realized in that meditation that I had to stop doing it and never do it again. And not the satire, actually, but the whole attack, thought, and judgment thing. I wrote in a piece that for this, I said that I spend my whole life looking for the bad guy, whether it be a public figure or party or climate deniers or anti-vaxxers, whatever, that my neighbor who blasts the sound system, sugar, whatever it was, I spent my whole life looking for whatever evil agent I thought was making me unhappy. And then almost immediately I realized this, looking out there for someone to blame was what had made me anxious and depressed all my life. It was that looking, it was that searching, it was that relentless search for the guilty party that had made me miserable. And I was determined in that moment, in on that morning, to stop blaming others for my troubles, and I said I wasn't going to fight or choose sides anymore, which is really hard because, particularly in New York, you're tempted every second. But I said I'm going to drop my sword and shield and never pick them up again. And I went from there, I think the same day, making a list of people I held grievances against for years, decades even. That makes me sad. Relatives, friends, teachers, myself, and that I had to work every day, minute by minute, with enormous attention to ask for help and try to work through my ancient hatred and this searching for the bad guy, which I've spent all my time doing in my life. And I'm going to be doing this forever. I know that, every day there's a temptation, but I'm really determined to keep my sword and shield down. It's really the hardest thing I've ever done. I said in a piece that I wrote about this, that my conclusion was that I don't have to work at being more loving. I have to work at being less hating. And I realized that is the message of the Course, that is not about doing, it's about undoing. And the way I have to do that is to look at all these murderous thoughts and, go into the black, into the shadow. Ken Wapnick would say that these are the gory details of the Course that nobody wants to touch, but you have to. And you have to go into the valley of the shadow of death. Every spiritual path says that, but man, have I resisted. And so it's much easier, isn't it, to just blame whoever? But I've just gotten now that the only way home is to stay on top of this and pay attention to the anger and murderous thoughts and hatred that come up, and ask for help. So it's a tough story for me to tell. Tam, I told you once before that your mother would say on these podcasts that she was the president of the Slow Learners Society, or
Slow Learners Group.
Slow Learners Group. And now that she's gone, God bless her, at least in her body, I'm definitely in line to become president. I just go so slowly, but anyway,
you're going to have to fight me for
it. All right, co-presidents then. But yeah, I really, the story is hard to tell because I was like, wow, I needed to do that every day for 4 years to finally get it. When you, my posts are everywhere still, and I realized, wow, that wasn't funny. The joke was on me, not on the ex-president. It was on me. And
always is.
It's really intense for me to even think about that. But yeah, so I have a new mission now, and I'm not writing about that anymore. So there you go. And that's it.
I find, well, first of all, there's a beautiful line in the Course that goes to both of your stories, which is an ancient miracle has come to bless and to replace an ancient enmity that came to kill. And I really love that. And basically, as a writer, one of my great challenges was like, it's all story. It's all story. Why am I perpetuating story by writing more story? And to come to grips with Course principles as you write and seeing what you put out there. If you're putting out a horror story or whatever, it's, it's fun, it's thrilling, it's fantasy. But what are we really doing? It's just like having a baby that you're not, putting down a certain path. And it gets very tricky when we overthink it. But I do believe that the more we're based in heart, the more our writing starts to reflect that. And so, I completely applaud your reviewing your own works, that probably did bring people more delight than you can give credit for it just being mean and ill-willed, because it at least made people laugh during a time that they were downtrodden.
Yeah.
So it's not without any value. It's just where you were at the time, and you got used. Remember, we're puppets, and not to give up accountability or responsibility, but your skills did get used for everyone's learning and not just yours. And, your correction is also equally as beautiful.
Well, I thank you for that, actually. I mean, I've taken some solace in the fact that, this is what it took to knock my walls down to some extent. But I appreciate you saying that, because, people would write that, I kept them going through 4 tough years or whatever. But I just kept feeling like, wow, you know what, it's as a kid, I'm a small guy. And as a kid, I just developed a very sharp tongue, and I got a lot of people laughing, but it was always at the expense of, the nerd or somebody in class that was, could have used some love. And so I've always felt bad about that too. So I do appreciate what you're saying. I'm working.
It's how you started this is what you need. Well, I'm careful. I don't want to say what you need, but how you started this was saying that the ex-president gave you the greatest opportunity for forgiveness. Same with yourself. Same with yourself. And, I always found it amazing. His name was Trump. He overrode everything. His name was true to form in that. And there's blessings that come with that as well. And so as you, exercise that poison pen, you also, it became hopefully homeopathy to you. And so the forgiveness of yourself for having done that, like all the blame, once you wake up and you see it, the next step is move to forgiveness. That was perfect. And thank you. And thank you for contributing what you did at that time of consciousness and this time of consciousness. Thank you for what you're contributing.
Wait, Trump? I was talking about Truman.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
True man. We're talking about true man.
You want a great synchronicity, Tam? That man and I share the same birthday. Different year, but exactly the same birthday.
Yeah.
and the birthday is Flag Day. It's Patriots Day. So yeah, it's fun.
I mean, and you're doing this on
Can't make it
up. You're doing all this on Bastille Day.
Yeah. Another person who is just a mirror for me. My Gemini brother, showed me exactly what's in my heart.
Exactly.
It's so crazy.
And we all have a piece of the same. All of us. It's all one reflection. So good for you. And more in Yiddish, good on you. In English. Translation.
This isn't easy to do. I mean, you developed a reputation and a following on Medium for this, and I mean, once the inertia of having those attack thoughts and feeling right, I know exactly how you feel. I feel like when I get involved in these political ideas, it's always you hear that term, the thin edge of the wedge. The thin edge of the wedge. Like one political thought is like the thin edge of the wedge, and it just gets in and expands, and then it's like this roaring anger comes through, and it's very hard to let go of that, because it becomes part of the identity. And I think we're seeing that on a mass scale throughout the U.S. right now, also other parts of the world too. It's not just the U.S. So it's really commendable that you take you get a message, but then you follow it up with the action. I wonder what the reaction would be to your Medium followers if you wrote the story you just described and why you did it. Let go.
Well, maybe we'll find out. The audience is there. I haven't found exactly the next message, but your point is a very good one. And, this is what I want to talk about now. And hopefully, because I think as I do, it fortifies me even in telling the story today, with you, Tam. I mean, giving me another point of view, because it hasn't, I've been Embarrassed is one word, maybe a little ashamed, just kind of thinking, God, I'm so thick, I mean, when am I going to get it, but it feels to me like I can, this is forgiveness. I've never understood it until really almost that moment. It's all or nothing. There's no exceptions, and that just seems so outrageous, I mean, yes, of course there's exceptions. No, there are no exceptions, and that is extreme, but it's beautiful, and it's the only way home. And now I know that is the case, and it's not popular, particularly in New York, to not, to go to a gathering and not get on the bandwagon. It's easy to find witnesses. It's so easy to gather evidence, right? We're right. That's bad. I'm good. Well, no, sorry. It's tricky for me.
It is.
It's very tricky. And, it's a real, I don't think it is about us getting it. It gets us. The joke's on us. It gets us. It's as we release to that which we are, it is out to get us. The moment you decide a path like A Course in Miracles or any spiritual path, it's working on us, and we don't have to try as hard as we think we have to try to get something. Things get revealed. You're just committed and have that little willingness. And, we're all idiots in our ego world of what
we're
we
all
think.
mad.
Yeah. But it's so, it's a beautiful path. One of my favorite sayings of a teacher who I've really loved to listen to at times is Adyashanti. And one of the funniest things I think that got said was, he said, we work so hard on ourselves to wake up, and we work so hard on like everything to try and work on ourselves to wake up. And then, it happens and we realize, oh, only 8 billion more.
Yeah,
I love that. I mean, it really makes our own path not only futile in one feeling, in one aspect of, but let go and just be in it and know it's being taken care of and do the best we can.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Ellen, we'd like to ask guests, when you're caught in kind of an ego storm, is there anything practical you do to cool off and get centered back into your forgiveness practice? It sounds like it's really a hard thing to do in New York City because there's a lot of personalities walking around there, as you mentioned, and a lot of ample opportunities to get, set off again. So what do you do to cool off?
I have a long list of things that I do. I mentioned that especially as a kid, I felt terrified and very alone, and my adrenaline level must have been very high, like always in fight or flight. So I read once that humans are the only mammals that don't shake off nervous system overload, like a dog, whether it's happy or scared, it always shakes, and every animal does that. And we don't. So for me, I learned that some sort of daily movement and getting my heart rate up was the best way to manage these kind of frequent adrenaline spikes that I would have and help me calm down. I heard you say, Matt, on a recent podcast that you're not a good sitting meditator. Me either. I'm terrible at it. I'm restless and fidgety, and the monkey mind is going. So I walk a lot, and that helps with the agitation. Usually I walk along the Hudson River. That's not far from my home. And I walk or I cycle. Bicycles have been my lifesavers ever since I was a kid as well. I always say pedal strokes are like my moving mantra. I'd much rather be pedaling or walking than sitting in meditation. And you can often find me on a bike, and I love my bikes. So while I'm walking or cycling, though, I do a couple of things. You had read Bill's prayer, and I actually probably say it 20 times a day. That helps me a lot. I'm often speaking. This sounds a little crazy, but I often speak to I call them a circle of 18 ancestors and allies that I've gathered over the years. They've passed on, and I remember hearing a story about a kid who was scared in a thunderstorm and asked his father for help or soothe him. He said, "Oh, pray to God." And the kid said, "No, I need someone with flesh on. I mean, I need people that at least had flesh on." So I appeal to them daily. I just ask them to please come and help me when I'm scared, which is often. And I use the words "be with me." I just say "be with me." And then I watched, I'm a big Star Wars movie, and in a later film, the character Rey appeals to the Jedi Knights who came before her, and she kind of intones "be with me, be with me." So I always like that. Again, 3 simple words, just like buy him lunch, you can't screw it up. Spirit likes it simple. So for me, it seems to always be in 3. So I just say "be with me," and I feel something. And the last thing I do is, if nothing else works, I read the epilogue to the workbook, which ends with Jesus saying, "Of this be sure, that I will never leave you comfortless." I find those words so reassuring, and I need to hear that a lot, because I guess I've spent my life feeling largely uncomfortable and uncomfortless. So yeah, so those are a few things, but honestly, the list goes on. I need constant help and constant reminders. So yeah.
Allan, just as a little memorabilia here, that line about comfortless was my mother and Whit's vows to each other in their wedding.
Oh man, that is so sweet.
It was so powerful.
Wow. That is so sweet.
That line is a real special meaning in my own heart.
Yeah, that epilogue, the whole thing is amazing, but the way it ends, I'm always in tears by the time I finish reading the epilogue. And it says this is just the beginning. So, after you do the 365, well, you're just starting. And I've got to keep going.
That's why we're in the slow learners group, doing it over and over and over.
Co-presidents. Yeah, I love it. Matt, you want to join the club?
Well,
yeah. I'm still here, so I must be.
There is, exactly. That was always Jerry's line. Like when he was in his 90s and they said, "How you?" And he said, "I'm still learning."
Yeah.
I'm still learning because I wouldn't be here.
So good.
But the slow learners group, my slow learners group, was Whit, my mother, Bob Rosenthal, and Emmanuel. And beware when you get to that slow learners group. It could be a final stage.
Yeah, sweet.
Well, Allan, we have a tradition in asking what your favorite comfort food is.
Yay! I shall never leave you comfortless.
My personal preference is that it be unhealthy. Tam might disagree on that, but
disagree? Are you kidding? I mean, I totally respect all those little treats that are, without sugar. I hate them.
Okay, good.
That's where my hatred is. That's where my forgiveness opportunity is, to taste something that has fake sugar in it or something like that. I can't, my whole body can't do it. I'm a hummingbird. I need the direct sort.
That's actually might be your spirit animal.
Yeah.
Hummingbird. Well, this question is so obvious to me. I don't really even get it. It's dark chocolate, of course. What else would it be? 70% cacao or better, or darker. But I will say, better? I will say one thing. You had a guest on, a lovely guy named Manu, a few weeks ago, and some of his add-ons for chocolate are the ones I have. I said my father was Middle Eastern, so we had dates and dried figs all the time around our house. So dark chocolate and figs for sure. But I want to add something to Manu's comfort feast, and that is roasted almonds. My father would not have his figs or his dates without roasted almonds. So it's figs, dark chocolate, and roasted almonds. That's the key to happiness. Not studying a course, eating figs, chocolate, and almonds. So, amen.
And how about bagels? Is there? Can you get good bagels out of New York City? Is that a controversy to you, or is that
Matt? Can we get good bagels? There's only one place in the world to get good bagels, and that's at Bagel Bob's on University Place. I know there's conflict about this, but yes, the bagels are unbelievable there. And I got to do the schmear. That's from Seinfeld as well.
But they've made all these flavor bagels now, cinnamon and, just like a million different flavors. I have not seen a chocolate bagel.
I have seen a chocolate bagel.
You have.
I have at Bagel Bob's. You can get a chocolate bagel.
There you go.
Yes. Yeah, no problem at all. But for me, it's everything with a smear of temp tea, cream cheese, and some lox on top.
Yum.
There it is.
All right. I'm so hungry now. Did I say that loud? Okay. Well,
yeah.
Alan, thanks so much for coming on Miracle Voices and sharing your miracle voice. We really appreciate it. You had two great, very New York, classy stories. So thanks for coming on.
Well, I send you both a big virtual hug, and I hope I can deliver them in person one day. That'd be cool.
I think you should send these stories to, that show Modern Love. It's all about the New York love story from the New Yorker. You should do a little twist and send them this.
I will definitely consider that. That would be wonderful. Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening today. Please subscribe to Miracle Voices by hitting the subscribe button on your podcast app. If you are enjoying these conversations, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you use. And lastly, please visit us at miraclevoices.org and join our newsletter so we can stay connected. Until the next podcast, I want to leave you with my favorite course quote: "When you want only love, you will see nothing else."